Hello everyone and welcome to our Glass Roundtable. I would like to firstly acknowledge that I'm streaming from Wurundjeri country, and I would like to pay my respects to the Wurundjeri people, their elders past, present and emerging. And I would like to extend that respect to any elders who may be joining us tonight. Thank you again for joining us for this discussion all about glass, which coincides with our glass-focused theme at Craft at the moment, including the current exhibition Five Flow. We haven't had one of these roundtable programs since last year. These online events sort of came about in the height of the pandemic and proved an invaluable way for our community to stay connected, motivated and inspired. And while Victoria is certainly in a much better place now, the accessibility of this platform continues to prove invaluable as we welcome interstate friends in tonight's discussion, including Alexandra Hirst and Tim Edwards from South Australia. And before we get underway and I hand over to our panelists, just a bit of housekeeping. This event is a Zoom webinar, and although your camera and audio are turned off, we do encourage you to get as much out of tonight's session and ask questions via the Q&A button located at the bottom of your screen. These questions will be addressed at the end of the discussion. We would also love to know who's attending tonight, so feel free to pop in your name and where you're tuning in from in the comment section. And now, allow me to hand over to the formidable Alexandra Hirst, who will introduce herself before leading tonight's discussion.
Hi, so I'm Alexandra Hirst from South Australia, and I'm currently working at the Jam Factory. And, you know, I'm so thankful for Craft Victoria and Eliza for setting up this phenomenal roundtable discussion, and hopefully we can talk about some very interesting topics. So I would love everyone to give a bit of an elevator pitch of their practice and what they're all about. And Blanche, take it away.
Hi, my name's Blanche Tilden. I'm a glass artist and a contemporary jeweller, and I live in Melbourne and have a studio in Melbourne, and been practicing in those two fields for probably about 30 years. So I have an established practice in craft and design, and yeah, that's what I do.
Brilliant. Holly, do you want to give us a little shout out?
I'm a glass artist as well, and I work predominantly with blown glass. I have a studio in Cheltenham, Victoria, and yeah, I'm just been doing it for about 15 to 20 years. I get a bit confused now. And yeah, I'm really honoured to be participating in this. So thanks for asking me.
And Jasmine?
Hi, thank you so much for having me. My name's Jasmine Morgan Ryan, and I'm an interdisciplinary artist, but I focus predominantly in glass, all different types of forms: hot glass, warm glass, glass blowing. I work with found objects. So my practice is really centered on looking at the scientific history of glass, and in terms of glass being the sort of material hero of the scientific world, and looking at some of the things that are happening in our world today, such as anthropocentrism and the environmental impacts, and all of the things that glass as a material has allowed us to be able to research and see hidden aspects of our world around nature. And so I've been practicing for about 12 years, and that's me.
Fantastic. And Tim?
Anthropocentrism, I don't know what that is.
Anthropocentrism, it's the human impact on the environment.
Right.
In a nutshell.
So yeah, I'm Tim Edwards. I live in Adelaide, which is Kaurna country, and mostly I kind of make glass things at home at my home studio, and I blow glass at the Jam Factory, where I also work as the technician. Yeah, and I guess I've been doing it for like 25 years, and before that I was a potter. for 5 years. So yeah.
Fantastic. So we have such a brilliant wide breadth of glass artists today in this panel. And so, you know, I'm an emerging artist, and I'm currently, like I said before, at the Jam Factory, but using blown traditional blowing techniques, but then I also incorporate 3D digital methods with casting technology in my work. But I'm really just starting out, so it's so amazing to kind of get these insights from all of you. So the next question that I'll start off with is really, we're all in this fantastic show that Eliza has curated at Craft Victoria called Fireflow, which you know, is engaging and talking about new thinking and new approaches to glass. And I just wanted all of you to kind of talk about how you think this divulges within your practice and within your work. Holly, I would love to hear your thoughts.
Well, sorry, can you repeat that?
Okay, so in the exhibition Fireflow, it talks about how we all have been picked because we deal with new approaches and thinking within our glass practice. I just wanted to know how you think you engage this within your work and your bone pieces.
I think part of it is some of the techniques I use. So I've sort of adjusted a technique. It's a photosensitive technique that you normally use for trophies, and I do it on a larger scale. So it's using sort of digital technology with glass, and I like that combination of old and new, and also exploring sort of, you know, different sort of narratives in the pieces as well. So for me, a really important part with my work is where it starts from, which is taking actual photographs out in nature and sort of trying to recreate that experience in glass. And I just think that, you know, everyone's kind of different in their approaches, and it sort of comes from what you're really interested in and passionate about and your inspirations. So it's kind of nice to be part of this show where everyone's got very different inspirations, and that sort of creates quite a different dialogue in glass.
Yes, definitely. Do you find that you've always used this photo technique and sandblasting away? Because you use a lot of different color combinations within your work to kind of depict these beautiful scenarios within nature. Could you talk a little bit more about that?
I think my subject matter, even when I was a teenager, has been really, I've always been interested in the landscape and nature. And like my first blind forms at school was, you know, these fish shapes and waterforms. And I think because coming from WA, I really miss the water. So I'm always been interested in that sort of natural forms and sort of having fairly sort of organic sort of, yeah, shapes and things. And the sandblasting, it's a technique that sort of developed, sort of progressed it further and further. And I kind of like that sort of incorporating the photographs and my being out in nature. So yeah, I certainly refined it over the years, I think. And, you know, it's kind of nice to, you know, exploring it in different ways. Like recently I've been casting glass and seeing how I can keep pushing it further. So, you know, I think it's always good to keep trying different things in your work.
Oh, completely. I mean, that's the joys of experimenting with glass and, you know, always pushing the boundaries with this material. So Jasmine, I would like to ask you the same question. How do you think that you incorporate new thinking within your practice?
A lot of what I've been looking at recently has been new developments in terms of glass technology, the glass that's being produced, but it's also looking at the history of what we've been producing. So a lot of the work have materials and things that can't break down, all different types of recycled glass. Sorry,
can you repeat that? You broke up a little bit there.
Not a problem. So looking at all different types of recycled glass, but also things that are made in glass that aren't recyclable. I work a lot with dichroic glass, which was
dichroic glass for the audience members and myself who might not understand what that is.
Sure. So dichroic glass, it's a highly reflective glass, and it was really developed to a high spec in the 1960s by NASA for the visor of spacesuit helmets. And when I was researching it, I thought it was really interesting that in order for an astronaut to be able to survive in space and be able to see and work, they needed a filter or a film on the lens of the spacesuit so that they could work, purely because they didn't have Earth's atmosphere. So dichroic glass synthetically mimics Earth's atmosphere and how it protects us in a similar way. So yeah, just focusing on those, working with those materials and pushing those materials and exploring the history and the relevance to them today.
Fantastic. And you use a lot of installation pieces within your work. And so do you find that you set up your pieces and then you follow through with this story with installation, or is it that you have set up within your work and then you basically, sorry, that was a very bad way of describing that. But do you always incorporate installations within your work, or is it more that you have stills? Because the pieces that are in Craft Victoria doesn't incorporate this installation light show, which I've seen pieces of your work before. Could you just talk a bit more about that?
Sure. The installation-based work, it's been slowly coming, and some of my more recent stuff has been more installation-based. There was a specific work that I did for last year's design, NGV Design Week, and that was a commission piece, and it was all about trying to find a way to describe how, when you go out into nature, and you spend time in nature, how it can kind of bring a shift in your consciousness, and it opens something up because we have a broader context of ourselves within the greater whole. And so I was trying to visually find a way to do that. So I started working with vintage projectors and lenses from telescopes and some cast pieces, and kind of bringing them all together. And then there was also a photographic piece. And the cool thing about the photographic piece was that it was a picture of the Milky Way, but it was mirrored, so that it looked like your mind was opening up and kind of expanding. And that expanded image was reflected. There was a cast bone, and the bone in the exhibition was, it's a bone from the face that not many people know that we have. It's a sphenoid bone, and it's where all the major sensory nerves from the eye run, and that happened to also mimic and look like that image. So I incorporate all different types of glass, and so the installation is just a bigger way of exploring the materials that I'm working with, and it's fun. I'm having fun with it.
Definitely. Fantastic. So Tim, I'm going to ask you the exact same question. And I just want to know within your work and in regards to the show, how you think you demonstrate new approaches to glass thinking within the work that is displayed at Craft Victoria.
Yeah, look, I thought about this last night because I had the question, but and I thought actually there's not anything that I do is that new in the way I think about it. You know, all the techniques that I use have all kind of been done before, and you know, I'm kind of just following in that tradition, I guess. And my interest in that is the machines that are used, you know, like I love the machines that are around the jam factory for blowing glass, and I love the machines in cold shops that, you know, like lathes and engravers and all the rest of it. And I find a lot of that stuff, I find it really sad that a lot of that stuff is possibly going to disappear. And that's not necessarily what my inspiration for doing it, but it is part of it. And I guess what I'm saying is that, you know, if you looked back, you know, 2,000 years, you would still see pieces like mine. Possibly not the same graphic, but, you know, it's still carved through a top layer of glass and it's still blown, possibly not 2,000 years ago, but, you know, yeah, so I would say that a lot of what I do is not new.
But you do have this very graphic nature and bringing this three-dimensional form, quite two-dimensional. And then when you walk around, you know, these so you are using very traditional methods with stone wheels that, you know, centuries old and not many people are using anymore, but then are bringing about this very graphic form that isn't really seen in glass at all. So do you think that it's more the final imagery than the tools necessarily?
Possibly. Yeah, I don't know. I guess yeah, maybe it's a hard question to answer, and it's hard to imagine that you yourself are kind of, you know, cutting new ground. You know, I would hate to think that I would be saying that.
Oh, definitely. But in the context of, I mean, because I think we would all be in a very similar boat in that way, being like, what, you think that we are, you know, using and on the brink of something completely different, but in someone else's eyes that haven't seen our practice or our work, and it comes to the table, I think each of us here are bringing something and shedding a new light that other people haven't necessarily brought to the table. But on that point, I might see if Blanche has any contradictions to this. I mean, you might feel the same way of that you're not considering new technologies or new approaches. What are your thoughts?
I probably would share Tim's point that it's kind of a feeling of a little bit of sadness that these skills are kind of disappearing. So in the area of glass that I specialise in, which is flame working or lamp working, that was developed to make scientific apparatus, and a particular type of glass was invented for that, which is borosilicate glass. And, you know, every university used to have its own scientific glass blowers to make the apparatus for the chemistry departments of universities, and over the last 10 years, pretty much all of those have closed, and all of that type of glassware is now imported from China. So that skill, which I think is a 7-year formal apprenticeship to gain that skill, there's no way to do that in Australia anymore. And so yeah, that's sad, but everything changes all the time, you know, and I just hope I can pass on what I've learned to other people, and I just really focus on doing what I can with the access to what I do have and just keep going. So I really think have developed quite a few innovative techniques of treating borosilicate glass almost like another type of a metal. So that sort of starts off with the way that you buy that glass. So it's different to the way that glass blowers in the hot shop work, where they're kind of gathering up the glass on a blowpipe, like they're gathering honey on a knife from a massive molten glass. When you work with borosilicate glass, it comes in rods of millimeter incremental increasing diameter and tubes with different wall thicknesses and sheet sizes that are thinner and thicker, and so you can do quite precise work with that. So that precision kind of speaks to the machine age or mechanics or architecture, and so I've kind of exploited that aspect of that particular type of glass in my practice in lots of different ways.
Yeah, and there's, like you were saying before, that, and with a lot of what we're all dealing with is that a lot of these techniques kind of have been lost, but then brought into a new light within this art practice. And with a lot of scientific glass blowing, had friends that were scientific glass blowers, and then all the industry is completely gone from Australia.
Yeah.
So the fact that you're using these tools with borosilicate glass and manipulating it with these beautiful adornment jewelry pieces, you're changing this into a new manner. So which is absolutely fantastic and looks beautiful in the show.
Thank you.
So and like you were saying, how we were when we're blowing glass, we're generally in teams and gathering this viscous honey-like material, which I think is such a great analogy. I just want to talk about, because like in my practice, I rely heavily on people and collaborations and assistance within my work, because I'm so new to what I'm doing, particularly at the Jam Factory. There's all this engagement and dynamic people around that I heavily lean on. And, within the show that we're all currently in, because of what happened with COVID, I couldn't be at the Jam Factory during the 2020 start, which was initially going to happen. So I collaborated with an industrial designer and who specialized in 3D modeling to help manifest the pieces that are currently in the show that use these 3D printing methods, and then also very traditional casting techniques, and that kind of allows that time to bring this work into fruition. But I was wondering, do any of you collaborate within your practice? Do you find yourselves, there is that kind of fine line of you're not necessarily, it's a collaboration with your assistant, but sometimes it is. So yeah, Jasmine, do you ever collaborate with other artists at all?
I do. I collaborate with other artists. I'm often the person that's working with glass, so we talk about our ideas and often end up manifesting them in glass. But when we come together, what we produce is completely different from anything that I would have produced on my own. So, and it's fascinating how working with other people can push the way that you work down completely different trajectories that you find yourself. It's with glass, it's often sometimes a bit about problem solving. So how can I make that? How can I make that happen? How can we use the tools that we have and our knowledge base? And then working with glass, I'm constantly asking my old studio technician for insight and support with casting and all kinds of stuff. And I personally love that it's a collaborative process, because the more people talking about art, participating in art, specifically glass, which is just so intoxicating, is just fantastic. Being in the hot shop in a big group of people all working together, it's quite intimate, and you're all trying to make this giant or really intricate piece. It's the place I want to be.
It's very addictive.
Yes.
And yes, there is this aspect, you know, particularly in the hot shop. You know, we're not like a lot of industries where we're very quiet and secretive. You know, if your assistant is going to be able to assist you properly, they're going to have to know how to make half of your work with you. So, you know, there is this beautiful community and sharing and knowledge. Holly, do you do a lot of collaborations within your work?
I think one thing that attracted me to hot glass particularly was because my background was restaurants and working, you know, within a team, and that sort of like working, it's almost like working in a hot kitchen. You have people that have certain roles, and so I always enjoyed the teamwork of that. And there's definitely like, especially in the last 13 years, there's two artists that I particularly collaborate with, and they gaff most of my pieces now. So, and that's Tom Rowney and Nettie Blair. And, you know, without them, I wouldn't be able to make my work. You know, it'd be a very different sort of work. So, you know, I feel really fortunate to be able to work with those guys. And also my husband, Aaron, I worked with him a lot, and his opinion is like, you know, quite important to me because, you know, we quite often disagree, but he's always very honest, a bit too honest sometimes, but I respect his opinion. And he sort of works with, especially with like the projection pieces that I do, he helps with the lighting and brackets and just sort of everything. So, but, you know, a lot of what I do now is I work alone in my studio, which is also nice. So I kind of love going to Canberra or working in the hot shop here in Melbourne, where I get to kind of work in a sort of, you know, with other people, and you have a lot of discussions. And I think that's actually really important to have those sort of talks.
Definitely. And do you find that with Nettie that you're, you know, leaning on their advice, particularly if they want to upscale your pieces at all? Because I'm just thinking of the works that are in Craft Victoria, which they, you know, are multiple and beautifully tall. Do you find that you're getting their input in scale and size, or you've got that vision and you're taking the lead?
Well, after, you know, working with them for so long, you know, I have a really good understanding of the capabilities, and I know particularly with Tom, who blew those vessels, you know, he'll say that he can't do it, and then suddenly he'll do it, you know. There's not many things he can't make. So I feel really fortunate that I can work with someone who's got such a who's so versatile in their skills. And Nettie's amazing, like with the sort of billy cans and kettles and things like, she's got a really good understanding of that sort of form and how to hot join pieces together. So, you know, they've really opened up my career. I think they've given me a lot more opportunities, you know, in what I can actually do with the glass. So yeah, it's great.
Yeah, brilliant. So like within that, I also want to discuss, you know, what do you find the biggest challenges that, you know, are facing glass artists right now? You know, our carbon footprint, so many of the studios are shutting down resources, you know, that we're trying to hold on to. Blanche, I would love to hear your thoughts on this, particularly because you're also using, you know, scientific glass that's kind of been shunned to the corner. Are you worried about, you know, more technology or studio facilities that you can't even use, or other people's training that you can't have insight into?
Not really. I wouldn't say I was worried about it. That's just the way it is. So you have to keep on adapting. And I think all through my career, I have adapted to whatever studio I have, whatever access to equipment I have, whatever access to help I have. So I think it's just more of the same, of just that if you want to make something, you'll find a way to do it. And I think you need to keep on looking for opportunities and adapting to what you can do. But so in terms of the resources that I use, a great thing about flame working is that you run it off a gas bottle that you can turn on and off. So I'm really fortunate that I don't have to run a furnace. You know, I wouldn't be able to do that at all. So yeah, I'm only burning gas and oxygen when I need to make something, and then I turn it off. So I guess sort of like needs must. I've always had that kind of an approach to being frugal and economical with resources, and I will just keep doing that. But I think it'll be very challenging to work as a hot glass artist, for sure. Just there's just the opportunities or the access to facilities is getting smaller and smaller. Yeah.
Teeny tiny, particularly in Australia.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts, Tim? You know, we're so lucky in Adelaide, the fact that we have the jam factory at our fingertips, but there's so many institutions that are shutting down and not even allowing glass artists to come through. Do you think this will have a big impact on how the jam factory will be run?
Yeah, I think it will. You know, you just have to look at the. I know you're a first year. Well, no, you're kind of a second year now, Alex. But yeah, it's, you know, there's no one that really wants to do it anymore. It's kind of interesting. It's not no one. It's just that we don't have the applicants that we used to have, and that's direct, you know, directly related to the university program shutting down, for sure. But in that, I think, you know, the state government of South Australia has really kind of screwed us around with gas and electricity prices. So to run an electric furnace, you know, we would be paying maybe even twice what we're paying with gas at the moment. So, you know, some of those things I just go, you know, this is all skewed and it's got to be kind of fixed up. The other thing with an electric furnace is you can't really melt batch, so we're kind of hamstrung there.
Yeah.
At the moment.
And I was having an interesting conversation even today with the fact that, you know, even if we went to an electric furnace and we were using pellets, that, you know, depending on where you get the pellets from, they could be using a gas furnace anyway, you know, to melt it down. So
well, that's the thing.
So I think, you know, these are conversations that, like, yes, there is a shift and we're all very conscious of the carbon footprint, but it is hard to have that changeover. But it's not like, you know, there are mass studios everywhere. We've got this beautiful studio that is running 2 furnaces full time, but they're used constantly. So all things to consider. What about you, Holly? You, within your work, you even display quite a lot of environmental issues within some of your pieces. What do you find the carbon footprint an issue for yourself?
Well, to be honest, if I did, I probably wouldn't be a glass artist, you know. I mean, I do really think about it, and it's a tough one for me because, you know, I love nature, and I think we're doing terrible things to our environment, and you know, it's, you know, and I suppose in other ways, in the way that you live, you can kind of help, but, you know, I suppose glass isn't probably the best industry in that sort of regard, but yeah, can't really think we're sorry.
But it's true. I mean, I'm the same. I'm very conscious of you know, we're in this industry and it's a tricky one, and it takes years to get proficient at it. And, you know, there's a lot of resources that we're using, and it's, you know, very physical. And so
I am tending to reuse like a lot of, I used to cut off a lot of sections of glass, and so I do tend to use pretty much everything, every little bit of glass that I make gets used in some form, so nothing gets wasted. So, you know, it's a definite thought, and, you know, if there are ways in the future that we can negate some of the what we do, I think it would be good to kind of follow through on that. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And what about opportunities with universities and everything? You know, because something that I'm worried about is the fact that, you know, these institutions are shutting down. And so, you know, certain places where you could be able to do residencies at, or, you know, spend a bit of time, and then also getting other students excited about the craft, even if it's just now turned to electives, which a lot of places have gone. Well,
I think it's a big shame, because RMIT, not last year, but the year before, started doing glass, and they had a glass course, and it was really successful. And there was a lot of people there that wanted to do a mentorship with me, because they didn't know how they could keep doing glass. So I think there would be people interested. And it's just the fact, unfortunately, with universities, you know, glass is an expensive course to run. Any kind of making course, you know, even sculpture and ceramics, it's one of the first courses that unis tend to get rid of, because you can't fit in 100 students into one class. So I'm really concerned, and I kind of, at the moment, I feel like I'm a dying breed, you know. And in 10 years' time, there just won't be people who can make stuff anymore.
Yeah. Well, and like, you know, it is so much that case that so many places are shutting down, but there seems to be more work than ever, and people are so, and, you know, because of Blown Away as well as much of other things. And I think people want to make their houses so much nicer at the moment that it seems everyone that I've talked to that's a glass artist, and the fact that at the Jam we've got more commissions than ever, but, you know, you can't knock on anyone's door to come and help out. So I think that is also a bit of an issue. Jasmine, what are your thoughts? Do you have like any places that you were like, oh, I really wanted to do this, you know, residency at ANU, but now all their facilities are kind of shifting, and, you know, it might be at ANU, it might not be?
So I glass artists and artists in general, I think we're quite resilient, and we've learnt to become very adaptable. So the institutions may not be there, but the people are there, and the communities are there, and I think that's the really important part. And still having craft as an institution is a huge benefit to our practices and to our networks, the ability to all come together and share what we know. So I'm a bit naughty, and I do tend to think, well, if the institutions aren't going to support us, then we need to get on and find a way to come together to support ourselves, to make sure we do what we can. And just by doing our practices and continuing to use glass makes people want to get involved, because it's such an interesting and intriguing medium to work with and see being produced. I was actually doing my PhD at Monash when they closed the glass department and ceramics department, which I was working in both of them at the time. And it was horrible, because we had something like 70 students and no one graduated, no one finished their degree. And the hard thing is the studio is still there, all the materials are still there, the kilns are still there, the furnaces are still there. And you still have people calling and saying, can we use them? Can we take part? So it's this real dichotomy, and I'm so grateful that there are so many artists that are doing really, really well. Patricia Piccini is just about to release a whole bunch of hot glass pieces that are just so intriguing, and I can't wait to see that. So the broader and the bigger the artist working with material is so important. So yeah, I think we're just going to keep doing what we're doing. And also, if somebody comes to us and asks for support or ideas of, oh, I want to make this, I don't know how to go about it, put one another in contact with one another, because it's really important to keep those networks together and alive, because often teachers that were working will find another way to work. So they might be working at the community centre, they might be working at a TAFE now, they might have started their own studio. So then that makes me really motivated to keep going and trying working with them to support their practices in their studio. Because there's lots of different ways we can approach it.
Oh, definitely. And, you know, it might not actually be such a bad thing that, you know, the universities are shutting down, and that, like, you know, maybe more TAFE courses, or because universities have become such a business now and the skills aren't there, you know, they're not teaching. It's so conceptual, and I'm not saying that conceptual thinking isn't the way to go, but, you know, if you want some hands-on experience with the material, you're going to have to be taught those. So, you know, if there is a shift, and, you know, like you were saying, there's such a close knit with the glass community that I think that we could, you know, knock our heads together and we're resilient and we'll survive. But, you know, these are great discussions to kind of bring about, that, you know, maybe have been slightly discussed and slightly talked about, but yeah, to get these insights from you all who you know, have had such a phenomenal practice throughout the years. So yes, perfect. But okay, on a happier note, because, you know, we went a little bit depressing there, but what excites you all most about 2021 within your practice? You know, does anyone have any particular shows that are coming up, any techniques that they're really just testing to try out? Holly, let's take it away.
Yeah, I'm sort of got a few shows coming up. Sydney Contemporary, which is the first time I've been in that, so it'll be really great to be in the big art fair and check it all out. And I've got a couple of shows. I'm organising a touring show to Europe, which was meant to be probably happening, I think, next year, but it's not. So hopefully that'll happen in 2023, and it's going to a glass museum in Denmark and another gallery in Holland, and we're trying to organise another venue as well. So that's actually fun to be on the other side, like, you know, sort of organising that, because normally you get invited, but to actually be on the one organising it's actually been really interesting, and just, you know, the conversations you have with people. So it's a good learning experience. I think it's just that other side of what I do. So instead of just making, sort of, you know, organising stuff and other people.
Yeah. And how's that going, or trying to organise other artists to come together? And sorry, did you say that the exhibition is going to be showcased in Holland?
Yeah. It's a group show, so Tim's wife is in it, Claire Belfresh, Jess Lachlan, Kirsty Ray, Brendan Scott French, and a couple of artists from the Ninyuku Art Collective as well. So yeah, it's a really amazing group of artists, and I feel really honoured to have my work showing with them. So yeah, so hopefully we're actually showing it first at Craft, so that's kind of the premiere. And it's at an Oz Glass conference, which I think is good that there's going to be one, because we haven't had one for a while due to COVID, and I think it'd be great for people to get together and, you know, kind of it's really important to have that sort of communication and catching up, and also like for new people coming through to talk to artists, and and that's how you can make good connections as well.
Yeah, and expand the community, and who knows what from that will, you'll take over the world.
Well, there hasn't been an Ozglass conference in Melbourne for a while, so I think it's really important that we have one, considering we don't have like a glass centre here. And there's actually more small studios opening up in Melbourne, which is actually really promising. So it's great that there's actually people who are, opening their own glass studio. It's actually quite a big venture.
Brilliant. Tim, what about yourself?
Well, I was a little bummed actually that Adelaide only kind of went into lockdown for 3 days, because I really wanted that time to spend in the studio by myself. But no, look, I guess opening up a bit this year, although it's hard to know, kind of, it's a roller coaster, isn't it? So I don't know. I've been kind of scouting German eBay for old machines and doing a few things like that. That's something I'm kind of interested in, and also probably researching more stone technology, like surface speeds and optimum speeds for stones and diamonds and all that kind of stuff. Because I do so much cutting these days, yeah, that's kind of what I'm going to do this year.
And so the machineries that you're looking at are mainly just based in Germany, or are you thinking of getting some Czech machinery as well? Or is it just kind of like anything that's on the market, you're like, dibs?
Well, I've got to have somewhere to put it.
Yeah.
And I can't just stick it on my front veranda. But so, yeah, I don't know. I kind of, actually, I've been contacting the people that are selling stuff on eBay to find out these histories and to chat to them about the old factories in Czech and in Germany. So I guess that's what I'm really interested in at the moment, as well as my artwork and being a technician at the Jam. But that, is really kind of fun.
Yeah.
So I contact them and chat.
And are you looking to kind of expand any new processes with the stone wheels at all? Because you do a combination of stone carving and also sintered wheels. Am I correct?
Yeah. So I just do stone finishing. But what was the question? Am I looking to...
So are you looking to expand some more ideas and different carving methods?
Possibly. I've got a few miter wheels that I had imported from Germany, and I just got them the other day, and so I might look at doing something with those. I'm not sure. It goes back to the earlier thing about not wanting to lose a lot of that kind of information and skills. So it's about finding the right people that can give you that information and want to chat about it. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Hey Tim, are you reconditioning old lathes?
I can do it, that's something that I can do, but I'm not a machinist. I'd get someone to do it, but I have a good understanding of the machines. Yeah.
Just because there's always a shortage of lathes, it seems so.
Well, I can't look, to be honest, I just bought 4 on eBay, so they're on the boat coming out. They're not like beautiful old cast iron spaziers. They're diamond cutting machines. They go a lot faster, but it's kind of fascinating for me. I'm so interested in machines. It's kind of why I'm a glass person. There's so many machines.
Well, in Edinburgh, we had a huge amount of crystal cutting machinery from the studio that shut down in Edinburgh, and it was phenomenal. There was just boxes and boxes of stone wheels that just ended up in the bin because nobody was using them, and they were like, oh, they're so old and we don't really know how to, you know, attach it to the wheels anymore. And that's, you know, it's such a shame. So it's good that like at least you're kind of going in and finding all these machineries and bringing a new life to it. So I'm
Possibly.
that.
I don't know.
Yeah.
They might end up in the garden.
There could be a floral arrangement. New notes.
Yeah.
Jasmine, what about yourself? What's exciting for 2021?
Well, I'm very, very fortunate. I have been contacted by the World Meteorological Organization, which is a branch of the United Nations. And they were interested in my work and wanted to have me go overseas and talk at a UN summit on environment and climate change, which is awesome that an artist could get to do that, particularly a glass artist. And then COVID hit, and I ended up having a baby. So I'm on the end of my maternity leave, but the amazing thing that's happened is that I can still work with them now remotely. And so it's actually going to end up better for me and my family and what I get to explore in my own backyard, so to speak. And so I think after the year that we've had, some of the things that I really want to look at in my practice is particularly resilience within nature, but also stories of how nature can win and overcome. And so I've been researching a lot on mushrooms recently. Mushrooms are absolutely phenomenal what they can do for the environment and different ecosystems. And so these mushrooms that were found in the last 2 years in Brazil that can actually eat and break down plastic, which I just think is amazing.
Incredible.
And something that needs to become public knowledge and within the mass consciousness and a part of culture. So I've gone from casting things in with crystals to now casting things that are growing. And so it's presenting a whole new world of challenges of learning how to cast organic material, which breaks down as incredibly fragile. So I'm pushing the boundaries of what I can do and also problem solving all the way along. So yeah, so that's me. Kind of, I guess it's a home artist in residence as I gently end my maternity leave and slowly go back out into artland.
Amazing. And so have you used mushrooms before in your practice?
No, I've got a couple of really big pots out in the backyard and in the shed. I'm very lucky my partner randomly, he adores mushrooms, and so it's like he had been doing all this research and I hadn't known that we had this kind of crossover in terms of our field of interest, but that often happens with the two of us. And so he already knew how to grow mushrooms, so he's been teaching me how to do that.
Amazing. Through osmosis, it's all coming together. Fantastic. And Blanche, what about you? What's exciting about 2021?
Well, one thing that I think is really exciting about glass in 2021 is the way that it's being used in contemporary art. So Jasmine mentioned Patricia Piccinini, and in particular, through my experience, Indigenous artists that are working with glass. At the moment, Yoni Scars has an exhibition called Missile Park that just opened at the Australian Centre for Contemporary Art in ACCA in Melbourne, talking about the nuclear testing and the effects of that in the country that she's from in South Australia. And also Marie Clark, another very prominent Indigenous artist, has been using glass a lot in her work and making glass jewellery with glass that's been made at the Canberra Glassworks. So these contemporary artists using glass, designing work that is made both at the Jam Factory and the Canberra the Canberra Glassworks is a really great new development, I think, in Australian art. The glass being used in Indigenous contemporary art with really high profile and really interesting artists. And so, yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing those shows and what those people do next, Marie Clark and Yoni Scars. And there have been other contemporary artists like Mike Parr did a big commission at the Canberra School of Art where he made work that was exhibited at Anna Schwartz Gallery where glass was cast, and it was a really interesting project. And so I guess that in a way that's a more of an entrepreneurial way of approaching commissions and working with people, and they come at it from a really different angle. They don't know the limitations of the material, so you know they're going to push people to work in different ways, and I think that's really exciting. So hopefully that continues. It seems to be growing, so I think that's a really exciting new development.
Definitely.
And also on a personal front, I have got a 25-year survey exhibition that's opening at Geelong Gallery on the 8th of May. So I've been working towards that for quite a while now, and it's going on a tour to 5 venues. So hopefully people can get to see that show either in Geelong or Sydney or Canberra, Toowoomba and Adelaide and Wagga. So that's pretty exciting. And I also am hoping to finish a PhD at ANU. So
To
I must have been wicked in a previous life because I'm pretty busy. No rest for me.
Things are hectic all around.
Well, it's good to be busy. There's a lot of opportunities, actually. There's still a lot that you can do. And yeah, it's kind of buzzwords at the moment of being resilient and adapting, but it's really what you have to do. You have to look for the gaps and be positive and find a way to keep going. There's always reasons to stop. So this is the latest one that the university courses are closing. We've kind of known that it's coming. So yeah, just got to keep going.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think I think there has to be a resilience, and you know, that being able to experience Melbourne Design Week and see so many phenomenal shows and so many people that were integrating glass in different ways in a very contemporary manner was a brilliant experience. So and then I'm just really excited to also develop my skills at the Jam Factory. So, and in the next week or so, we have Ben Eagles doing a workshop. So I'll get to be studying under him, which I'm incredibly excited about. But yeah, that's that's my 2020 fix for 2021, I should say.
It's so good to finish on a really positive note then, but also I think the topic that the discussion points that we had were so relevant across all sort of craft practices and that idea of community as well, especially like those buzzwords, resilience and things like that. And yeah, I mean, you know, it's nearly 7 o'clock, but we do have some questions. So if you're happy to hang around for a smidgen, we'll get through a couple, maybe not all of them. Yeah, maybe I'll start reading them out and you can fight over answering them. Okay, so the first one's from Ben Dixon Ward, and it's for Holly and you, Alex. And maybe Alex, you can answer first as you know, we've all been, well, everyone's been chatting much, so let's bring it back to you. What type of digital technologies are you using?
So at the moment, I'm using 3D printing. So within my current work, I was using an algorithm and generative design that one kind of had this fractal notch pattern, which is found in nature. And then the other one was repeating numbers, but making sure that everyone was different every time you 3D print. So yeah, this was done with my partner. But you know, there was a huge tie between the digital and the hand, and one couldn't really be done without the other, just in the same manner you use a paintbrush. Quite a tool.
Yeah. And those
so I mostly just use Photoshop for what I do, because I need to create like a pure contrast with most of my images. And I've also started creating like narratives in the work, so you tend to just Photoshop them in and things.
Yeah.
Nowhere near as interesting as Alex what Alex does.
Yeah, and I guess it's back to that idea with Alex again of like collaboration. You really worked with Eric, and these pieces that you're talking of are currently in the exhibition at Craft, and also that fractal algorithm that was also used for your pieces in the Fused Glass Prize. Is that correct? Or
no, so that was different. But while I was doing my master's in Edinburgh University, I learnt how to incorporate 3D printing methods, which I then burnt out using the PLA form, which so you've got the printout, which is made up of PLA, which is a corn-based material, and then that is made a plaster silica mold and then burnt out, and then I incorporate the glass after that. But so these were basic tools that I learned at Edinburgh, and then very basic Rhino tools, but because my partner is very digitally savvy, we had conversations about this and how this could progress further, and so this is how this exciting work kind of came to be.
And the fractal series, that's really looking for having a digital contemporary approach through the vase.
Yeah.
Yeah. So reversing. Yeah. Anyway, so we've got a couple more questions that we'll shoot through. From Jane, for Tim. Is your experience with ceramics influencing anything about the way you work with glass? So Jane, who's asked this, is a ceramic. It's from Jane Sawyer, and she's a ceramicist.
I would say definitely. You know, I guess I worked out a lot of forms early on when I was a potter. You know, I did all my undergraduate in ceramics, and I investigated kind of what I liked, what I didn't like, whether I wanted to work in the round or not. I was a thrower, so I didn't really do hand building or anything like that. But I guess, yeah, I would say definitely. You know, some of my favourite artists are still potters. Alison Britton and Lucy Bree and Hans Koper, you know, they were big influences on what I looked at all through the 90s, and I still look at them. Yeah. So, yes.
And I know even the surface form, I know it's interesting that you say you were a thrower, because there kind of could be that similarity between that textured and that rounded sort of bit that you do get on your surface. But yeah, anyway, so Amanda has asked, for those of us who are newish to glass, what tools do you believe are essential for molding or shaping glass? I also think that that question is reminding me of another thing that I think we should make a point of sharing perhaps with everyone afterwards in the comment section. All the small independent studios that we mentioned earlier, that could be good too, just, you know, to share around. But yeah, so who wants to go first about what tools you would recommend?
I think you should ask the tool man.
The tool man, the machine man.
But like, for what?
The machine man.
To do what? You know, because it's so varied.
Yeah. If someone were starting out for the first time, I think that's perhaps the approach. Yeah. What would you, maybe with casting, is that the way to get involved the easiest, or?
No, maybe, but you can just borrow all
Glass
the
isn't
tools.
easy. There's no easy.
It's not easy.
So Canberra Glassworks,
and learn, yeah.
Canberra Glassworks has all those tools available to, I think, rent, and if you do beginner stuff, it's probably supplied. And I think even at the Jam Factory, if you do like a one-on-one beginner class, you don't need to bring or have any of the tools. It's all available for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I have only just got my tools since coming to the Jam Factory, because you know, I've been in places that I've tried, tested, and then you get other people that can help you out and be like, no, this tool maker, you must have someone else, like, outrageous, I need this one. So, and then you get to have a bit of a feel, but if you're just, and tools are expensive, so.
Oh God, yeah.
I have found that one of the most valuable things I have is completely free if you can resource it secondhand, and that's dental tools for working with glass and casting. So if you just go to about 5 different dentists and say, please, 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 have you got any tools that you don't need anymore, and please may I have them?
After they've cleaned them.
Yeah, yes, after cleaning them. And yeah, so I just kind of amassed this this big box that I had when I was at Monash, and everybody would just come and quietly steal them and fall in love with specific ones. And yeah, they became quite beloved because there's an aspect of casting where it's quite, you know, archaeological, where you're working with materials, trying to get the casting materials to come away from the glass, or even if you're sculpting with wax, definitely dental tools are your friend.
Good to know. And this is more of a comment from Jess Lachlan. Thank you for joining in. Nice to hear you guys! Exclamation mark. What is beautiful about Tim's work is how he has adapted traditional techniques to express his own personal and contemporary investigations into the vessel and 2D and 3D. Thank you, Jess. Another one from Jane. Are hot shops on the way out? Do you have your own, or rent that time in them? Who wants to go?
Well, I can go, but I would say hot shops aren't on the way out. In fact, you know, we are kind of run off our feet at the Jam Factory. We could be twice the size. And especially from last year, when a lot of things can't be made in China for whatever reason, you know, so many people are coming to us, you know, lighting jobs and decanter jobs and bottle jobs, and it's just like, it's going off. You know, if you wanted to build a hot shop, now is the time.
Yeah,
I would say.
In Melbourne, Ruth Allen has a hot shop in Coburg, and Lauren and Amanda have just opened a hot shop in West Heidelberg, which is just up the road from where I live. And I think people are finding a way to open new hot shops where they can turn a furnace on and off with pots, and so they're not running gas all the time. So in Melbourne, that's 2 small independent hot shops that I know of.
There's actually 5 in Melbourne that I can hire out if I want to in Melbourne at the moment,
Yeah.
so, which is great.
Maybe at the end we can definitely collate all of this and share it with who's attending tonight. A list of hot shop hotspots. Is that word or too soon?
A lot of shared spaces. So you've got, you know, the Canberra Glass Works, you've got the Jam Factory, and then you know, places that are, for instance, Mark Douglas's, I think, are starting up some classes as well. So, you know, you have spots, even though there's areas that are starting up new studios as well. But if people want to have a taster of the material, then there's definitely ways of doing that.
Yeah. And I just wanted to also read another comment from the chat section as well, touching back again on sustainability. It's from Claire. Thank you, Claire. Tom Moore has done great research into the carbon emissions of a glass-based practice. He has great info and advice, and the carbon emissions are not quite as bad as he first thought, and it's really doable to offset your emissions. So that's good to hear. Yeah, positive to hear, especially, you know, after what we've all just been talking about. And okay, so back to, I'll answer. We don't have too much time because it's already 7:09, so maybe 2 more questions. So
maybe you could pick up on the question about the Ozglass conference. I don't know anything about that, but I'm sure that Holly could maybe, now that we have people, let people know that that's coming up and some of the details.
It's next year. I think it's the 5th to the 9th of February. And we're still working out the details of where it's going to be, but it's definitely going to happen. And we're trying to sort of keep it sort of fairly central in the city. And yeah, we'll organise some workshops and demonstrations, and it'll be predominantly focused on sort of Australian artists. So due to COVID, we're not really sure, like normally we'd fly some internationals over. So it might all change that, you know, now with technology, it might be more of an online presence as well. But yeah, it's going to happen. So it's, yeah, I'm pretty happy to be sort of involved in a little part in it.
Yeah. And please, you know, we will also be sharing this information with everyone in our newsletters and on our craft, what's on in the world of craft on our website. So yeah, we'll keep everyone updated with that too. So we make sure we send us all the details. But I think that's a pretty good note to wrap up on then. You know, an upcoming Oz Glass conference, you know, a positive future. So thank you everyone for coming in tonight and for staying back an extra 10 minutes as well. It was a really engaging and great conversation, important topics, an important topic to be talking about. But yeah, so if you haven't already come to the exhibition, pop on in. It's running until the 24th of April. And yeah, if not, until next time. Thanks so much. And thank you so much, Alex, for leading the discussion as well. Great.
Thanks, Alex.
Yeah.
Thanks, Alex.
Awesome.
Thanks, Eliza.
Thanks, Eliza.
Yeah,
Eliza.
Bye.
everybody.
And thanks for everyone for joining. Great discussion, guys.
Good.
Okay, cool.